week five, landed the plane, last teaching of this kind of deeper discipleship series. This final week is talking about rule of life. And as soon as I say the word rule, lots of things pop in your brains. Let them sit there, feel uncomfortable for a little minute. But I'll explain what that means. It's probably not what you think it means. But we'll be talking about rule of life. And just kind of before we jump into what that looks like, today is probably going to be the most practical of all of the 5 teachings. It's going to seem the least, I would say, I'm going to put air quotes, spiritual. And what I mean by that is just there's not going to be a lot of like heavy, dense, maybe heavy work teaching like some of the other ones have been. Today's the hope for this one is to be super practical and practical of actually taking what we've talked about in the previous weeks of being with Jesus, becoming like Jesus, and doing what he did, taking those things and actually not just having them be things that we can talk about or things that we can explain to someone or a cool party trick to have, which we're having coffee with somebody, like, oh, here's a cool thing to say. But actually get those pieces of following Jesus into every aspect of our life and actually just build structures and rhythms in our lives that push us towards those things. No matter what season we're in, no matter what's going on, that we would actually just have rhythms of being with, becoming like, and doing what Jesus did throughout our life. And again, the goal is not perfection. So the goal of discipleship, and I'll talk about this again later, is not perfection, but long-term consistency. Nobody is perfect. But long-term consistency breeds really incredible results. And so we're going to jump into what that looks like. Before we do that, to recap really fast the last few weeks, again, being with Jesus, becoming like Jesus, doing what Jesus did, the daily and lifelong pursuit of those 3 things is what we've defined as discipleship, of becoming a disciple, becoming an apprentice or follower of Jesus. And being with Jesus looks like prioritizing presence. We talked about prayer, scripture reading, silence and solitude, things that push us into being relational with God, relational with Jesus, actually spending time and space, creating space to be with Jesus. I'll also say prayer, reading scripture, silence, solitude are not the end-all be-all of being with Jesus. There are other practices that maybe you feel led to partake in or that are more emphasized in you. Those are just the 3 that we discussed that day. And then Brett taught on becoming like Jesus, and we talked about walking in the freedom that we have in salvation and actually releasing the burdens that we often place on ourselves through culture. And so we talked about pursuing emotional health, which was super fun, very, very light, right? Pursuing emotional health, talked about simplicity, talked about Sabbath and fasting, and really becoming like Jesus is actually changing the way we operate and view and interact with the world around us. So we're not just, being with Jesus, we don't just pray a prayer and then live the same way everyone else does. We actually change the way we interact with our stuff, with how we work, with our time, with our emotions. We actually deal with our past. We actually starve ourselves of things of the flesh. And so that is becoming like Jesus. And finally, doing what Jesus did. Tyler taught on that one last week. And that's actually, again, our spiritual formation is not about us. So us following Jesus is not about us being able to sit in silence and be really serene and have lots of presence, or Sabbath and rest and get to have fun and do what I want, or, pray so that way, or read scripture so I have a ton of knowledge, and pray so that I have like I'm able to speak words over, I'm able to just pray all the time. Whatever it is, it's not about us. It's actually about forming the world around us and actually interacting with those around us and actually taking that into the world and ultimately doing what Jesus did, actually bringing and displaying the gospel to the world around us. And we're going to land the plane, and we're going to discuss how do we form a rule of life to pursue a life of discipleship. How do we form a rule of life to pursue a life of discipleship? Because again, any venture we go into, whether it's you're wanting to run a marathon or you want to write a book or you want to read books or whatever it is, whatever goal you end up having, long term, it doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and you're like, man, I can run a marathon. Awesome, sweet. Check that off the list. No, it takes long practice. It takes many miles. It takes much endurance. It takes doing things when we don't want to do them, running at specific times, actually getting the gear that we need to run, actually probably doing it with other people, partnering with other people to run. Like there's so many things that come into running a marathon or completing any form of goal. And the thing that actually gets us to that goal is, do we structure the time, the things necessary to actually get us to that goal? And the same is for discipleship. So you're just going to wake up one day and be like, man, like I can cast out demons, I can heal people, I've got the whole Bible memorized, and man, I am so peaceful, and I have so much silence and like solitude in my soul's quiet, I'm just with it, and I'm ready to go. Like no one wakes up like that, right? And it's not just going to happen one day. But again, it's long-term consistency of structuring our life around certain practices that allow us to eventually get towards the goal of what we all want to be, which is a dense, strong follower, disciple of Jesus that is making an impact for the kingdom and in this world. It's all, I assume that those in this room, and if you're watching this, that's what you want to some degree. And again, that doesn't just happen, it happens intentionally. And so that's really the question that we're going to be asking is, how do we intentionally schedule our lives around discipleship? Whether you have a schedule or not, the truth is you are impacted by a schedule. You're either impacted by your ability to maintain a schedule, or you're impacted by your inability to maintain a schedule. And then those who you're around are also impacted by your inability to maintain a schedule. I'm not I used to, I think now I'm probably known as maybe being slightly regimented. I don't know for sure. I might be just saying that on myself. I'm not super scheduled naturally. I'm actually super, I was against calendars for so long. I was like, calendars are lame. They're for people who are boring. Like, I can do this. I got it all up in here. I got it. And I didn't do great in college, as you can probably expect. And when I started working full time, people were like, hey man, you forget stuff all the time. And so I got a calendar. I finally, was like, I should probably get over this pride. Probably reasons why people are continually telling me the same things over and over again. And I think it's due to a lack of schedule. Really, I got married, and then my wife was like, you're going to drive me crazy if you don't actually start forming a schedule. So I just drop things on her all the time. Oh, by the way, we have this tonight. It's like, that's not helpful. That's 2 hours from now. And so I just, started getting a schedule. And again, all of us at some level, whether we're super scheduled, we write out every single hour. I know people like that. I can't do that. Or we generally plan what we're going after. We structure certain things. Like if you don't have a schedule in work, or if you don't have a schedule in marriage, if you don't have a schedule in a lot of different things that you're going after, you're just gonna have a hard time actually getting where you want. You're gonna be tossed by the wind. You're gonna be pulled to and fro. You're gonna get distracted. You're gonna have things kind of get in your way, and you're even gonna be probably even more hurried and less productive, and actually have less margin for interruptions, which might seem contrary. But if a schedule really helps keep us in line towards something. And again, it's the same idea with discipleship and the same concept of rule of life.